Welcome to Storytelling and Beyond, the home of unforgettable tales that touch your heart, stir your soul, and inspire your journey. If you believe in love that conquers shame, truth that breaks silence, and courage that rewrites destiny, make sure to subscribe now, because this story will leave you breathless. She never imagined her wedding day would turn into a battlefield between love and loyalty. In a room filled with flowers and whispered blessings, all it took was one slap, one furious mother, and one truth too long buried, to tear everything apart. This is the story of Sarah, who chose her heart over her heritage and the price she paid to find peace. The sun bathed the rooftop venue in golden light, and Sarah stood before the mirror, barely recognizing herself in the shimmering white gown. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the lace on her shoulders. Not from nerves, but from everything this day symbolized. Marrying Aaron wasn't just about love, it was defiance. It was her stand against the expectations that had choked her since childhood. In the corridor, murmurs of guests arriving filtered through the closed door. Her bridesmaids fluttered around her, adding final touches, but Sarah's mind wandered to the night before when her mother had made one last desperate plea: "You can still walk away, Sarah. Don't disgrace this family." Sarah hadn't responded. She just turned and walked out of the room, the silence louder than any argument. As the music began to swell, and the ceremony commenced, Sarah walked down the aisle, her gaze fixed on Aaron. He stood strong and calm, his eyes misting over as she approached. The moment their hands touched, she felt the whole world quiet around them. A gentle breeze danced across the rooftop garden, and for a heartbeat, it felt like everything might actually be okay. But in the final row, a shadow shifted to Patricia, Sarah's mother, stood stiff as a statue, her face etched with anger. The moment she spotted Aaron's father sitting quietly with his cane, invited secretly by Aaron, her expression changed. Rage. Unmistakable, uncontainable rage. Before the officiant could finish the next line, Patricia's heels clicked furiously against the marble floor. Gasps rose as she stormed toward the couple. Aaron tried to step in front of Sarah, but she held her ground. "You invited him?" Patricia's voice sliced the air. "You chose them over me?" Sarah, trying to remain calm, replied, "Mom, this is my life. Please, don't do this." The slap landed before anyone could react. A deafening silence swallowed the crowd. Sarah's head snapped to the side, her cheek burning from her mother's hand. Murmurs rippled through the guests. Some stood in shock, others lowered their eyes. And then, Patricia did the unthinkable, grabbing her daughter by the hair, she yanked her away from the altar. Sarah stumbled, heel scraping the stone, veil tearing in her wake. "You're not going to shame me like this. Not with him. Not with his family." Patricia screamed. The officiant stepped back. Aaron reached out, trying to pull Sarah free, but Patricia's grip was fueled by something darker than fury. It was heartbreak. Jealousy. Fear. And something else Sarah couldn't name yet. But even as she was being dragged across the altar, Sarah didn't scream. She didn't resist. She looked straight into her mother's eyes and whispered, "You don't get to choose who I love." And that was when everything started to unraveling. The aftermath of the slap rippled through every corner of Sarah's heart like a storm breaking the quiet sea. The wedding venue was a mosaic of stunned faces, gasps frozen in throats, and whispers floating like smoke. But in Sarah's chest, there was no noise, just a tightening ache that told her something far deeper had broken than just a ceremony. Aaron rushed to her side. His hands, trembling but sure, lifted her gently from the floor where she had stumbled. Her veil lay crumpled beside them like a fallen flag, and Sarah could feel the weight of every gaze anchored to her. Still, it was Aaron's soft voice that grounded her. "I've got you," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her face, careful not to touch the swelling on her cheek. But her mother was still there, heaving, crying, enraged and unraveling in front of everyone. "You don't understand, Sarah," Patricia shouted, her voice cracking. "You have no idea what you're doing, what you're marrying into. This man, his family, they destroyed us once." That silenced even the whispers. Aaron's hand paused in midair. The words hung like poison in the space between them. "What are you talking about?" Sarah's voice was raw. Patricia's eyes were wide now, like a trapped animal cornered by her own secrets. Her lips quivered, and then something shifted. Her fury drained, replaced by a trembling sorrow as she looked at her daughter, not with rage, but with old pain. "His father," Patricia said, her voice faltering. "He left me. He promised me everything. And when I told him I was pregnant, he disappeared." Gasps, again. And this time, it was Sarah who stumbled back. "You mean, you and Aaron's father?" She couldn't finish. Aaron's expression changed, softening with realization. "Your name." "Patricia," he whispered. "My dad used to speak of someone named Patricia. He said he never got to explain why he had to leave. That he lost the only woman he ever truly loved." The room seemed to contract with the weight of decades-old pain. Patricia fell to her knees, sobbing now deep, shaking sobs that made even the angriest aunt in the third row pause in pity. "I was scared," Patricia wept. "Scared you'd face the same betrayal. That history would repeat itself. I didn't want that for you." Sarah, who had spent so long seeing her mother as an obstacle, now saw her as a girl, once young, once full of hope, once shattered by silence. And the pieces were all still there, sharp and shining in the light of revelation. She knelt beside her, wrapping her arms around the woman who had just hit her, just dragged her, who had loved her in a broken, desperate way. "You should have told me," Sarah whispered. "I would have understood. We could have healed together." Aaron crouched beside them, placing his hand over theirs. His eyes were filled with a strange sadness, but also something like peace. "We still can," he said. "Let's not let the past steal any more of our present." And just like that, the silence in the garden wasn't tension anymore. It was quiet awe. A kind of sacred stillness that only truth can bring. The garden, once echoing with shock and murmurs, now hummed with a strange calm. Guests had begun to step away, giving the family space as they grappled with the unearthing of long-buried truths. Sarah's hand was still entwined with Aaron's as they helped Patricia to her feet. For the first time in years, mother and daughter stood side by side, not as enemies in conflict, but as two women trying to understand a complicated love. They moved to a quiet bench under the archway, vines of jasmine trailing above them. Patricia sat down, her face pale, her fingers trembling. Sarah remained beside her, Aaron a step behind, present but respectfully distant. "I never hated him," Patricia began, almost to herself. "I hated what I became after he left. I hated that I had to raise you alone, working night shifts, missing birthdays, and never being enough. When you brought Aaron home, all I saw was his face. The past slammed into me." Sarah listened, her heart torn between sorrow for her mother's pain and a rising need to protect the man she loved. "But Aaron isn't his father," she said softly. "He's never been anything but kind, respectful, patient. If you had let yourself see him instead of a ghost, you'd have known that." Patricia nodded slowly. "I know that now. But it's hard, Sarah. It's hard when your heart has been trained to brace for betrayal." Aaron stepped forward, kneeling before her. "Mrs. Patel," he said, using her surname with care, "I know I can't fix what my father did. I never even knew this part of his past. But I love your daughter. And I'll spend my life proving to you and to her that love doesn't have to end in abandonment." Patricia's eyes filled again, but this time the tears were quieter. She reached out, hesitant, and placed a frail hand over Aaron's. "Then promise me one thing," she said. "Promise me that when you face storms, because all marriages have them, you won't disappear." "I promise," Aaron said, his voice firm. "I'll stand beside her through every storm." Sarah felt something loosen in her chest, as though years of tension had finally exhaled from her soul. The healing wouldn't be instant. But this was a beginning. The wedding resumed an hour later. It wasn't grand or loud. It didn't go exactly as planned. But it was raw, real, and filled with a sincerity no luxury could match. Patricia walked Sarah down the aisle this time, her hand tight around her daughter's, tears flowing not from regret, but from release. And when Sarah looked into Aaron's eyes as they exchanged vows, she saw not just her future, but the bridge they had built from broken histories to healing love. They weren't just getting married. They were rewriting a legacy. As the warm lights dimmed in the reception hall and the first notes of a soft melody played in the background, Sarah and Aaron stood together on the dance floor for their first dance as husband and wife. Their fingers were interlocked, their foreheads lightly touching, and the world around them faded into a blur of candlelight, murmurs, and twinkling fairy lights. But the weight of the earlier chaos still lingered in the corners of the room like an unwelcome guest. At a corner table sat Patricia, alone for the first time that evening. Her plate remained untouched, the champagne flat, her thoughts circling like restless birds. Around her, guests chatted again, trying to reclaim the mood. But she felt hollow. A mother's pride should have filled her, but instead, she was confronted with memories she had buried beneath years of resilience. She stared at her daughter, smiling now, radiant and calm. It struck her that Sarah looked nothing like the girl she once raised on grit and hard lessons. No, she looked like a woman who had learned how to love deeply, even in the face of pain. And Patricia realized, with a pang of shame, that the strength Sarah carried wasn't just from surviving, but from forgiving. A shadow passed over her table, and she looked up to find Aaron's mother, Elaine, standing quietly with 2 glasses of water. "May I?" Elaine asked, gesturing to the chair beside her. Patricia nodded. Elaine sat and studied the dance floor for a long moment before speaking. He didn't know. About what his father did. About you. About any of it. I kept it all from him. Patricia's eyes flickered with surprise. I was young when it happened, Elaine said softly. He told me he had just ended something painful. I didn't ask questions. I should have. Silence stretched between the 2 women, strangers once tethered by the same man, now bound by the love of their children. I blamed Aaron, Patricia admitted, her voice cracking. I blamed him for things he never did. I saw ghosts in him. Elaine nodded. You wanted to protect your daughter. So would I. They both sat there, breathing in the reality of the past and its tangled roots in the present. On the dance floor, the song changed to something a little more upbeat. Guests clapped. Laughter began to ripple again. Aaron led Sarah in a playful twirl, her gown catching the light like a cloud of stars. The room, once tight with discomfort, now pulsed with joy again. Patricia turned to Elaine. Do you think it's too late for me to start over with her? Elaine smiled gently. It's never too late to be the mother she needs now. That moment, quiet, almost imperceptible, shifted something in Patricia's heart. She stood, brushed the wrinkles from her dress, and with trembling steps, walked toward her daughter. Sarah saw her mother approaching and paused, her heart catching in her throat. I'm sorry, Patricia whispered, once close enough. For not seeing what was real. For letting the past blind me. You chose a good man. Sarah's eyes welled up. She wrapped her arms around her mother, resting her cheek on her shoulder. No more words were needed. Aaron stepped forward, placing a hand on both their backs. And just like that, 3 lives once marred by misunderstanding found a single rhythm, one built on truth, grace, and the courage to forgive. As the evening sun dipped behind the distant hills and golden rays bathed the venue in a warm glow, Sarah and Aaron stood quietly under the canopy of twinkling lights in the backyard garden. The guests had begun to leave, and laughter still lingered in the air, but the chaos of the earlier events had faded into a distant echo. The 2 of them had chosen this quiet moment for their final vows, away from the noise, the music, and the expectations. Aaron gently held Sarah's hands, gazing into her eyes. I don't know if I deserve you after all that's happened today, he whispered. Sarah smiled, her heart full. You defended me when no one else would. You stood by me when it would have been easier to walk away. That's all I ever needed. The sincerity in her voice settled something deep within Aaron. He leaned forward and kissed her forehead, a soft, lingering promise. From this day forward, nothing and no one will ever come between us again. Just a few steps away, Patricia watched them in silence. Her hands clutched an old photograph, one she had brought with her but never had the courage to show Sarah. In the image, a much younger version of herself stood beside Sarah's biological father, their smiles full of dreams before betrayal tore everything apart. She walked forward, hesitating only briefly. "Sarah," she called gently. Sarah turned, surprised to see the photo in her mother's hands. This was taken before I knew what pain was. I blamed everyone but myself for how things turned out. Especially you." Patricia's voice trembled. "I wanted to protect you from making the same mistake. But I realize now your love is nothing like mine was. It's stronger. It's purer. And you chose better." Aaron stepped aside, giving them space. Sarah took the photo and stared at it, then looked at her mother, seeing not the controlling figure she had clashed with, but a woman finally releasing her grief. "I forgive you, Mom," she whispered. Patricia's eyes welled up. "Thank you for giving me a second chance." The two embraced, and for the first time in years, it felt whole. Not perfect, but real. From the corner, Elaine watched the reunion with a soft smile. She stepped beside Aaron and said, "Love always wins. No matter how messy it gets." He nodded. "It really does." Later that night, after the last guest had gone, and the stars had claimed the sky, Sarah and Aaron stood on the porch, barefoot, sharing one last slow dance in silence. No music. Just hearts beating in sync. In the end, it wasn't the grandeur of the wedding or the decor that made the day unforgettable. It was the courage to love in the face of judgment, the strength to forgive, and the beauty of a bond that grew stronger under pressure. Thank you for being a part of this emotional journey. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Storytelling and Beyond, where every tale is more than just a story, it's a reflection of life itself.